February 13th, 2026. At midnight tonight, most of the agencies and services in the Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, will shut down as popular fury over the violence and lawlessness of federal agents from Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, and the U.S. Border Patrol made Senate Democrats refuse to agree to fund DHS without reforms. And yet, because the Republicans lavished money on ICE and Border Patrol in their July 2025 budget reconciliation bill, the one they call the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, those agencies will continue to operate. The 260,000 federal employees affected by the partial shutdown will come from other agencies in DHS, including the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, the Transportation Security Agency, or TSA, and the Coast Guard. A measure to fund DHS passed the House by a majority vote, but in the Senate, the filibuster allows the Democrats, who are in the minority, to make demands before the measure can pass. On February 4th, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, a Democrat of New York, and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, a Democrat of New York, sent Senate Majority Leader John Thune, a Republican of South Dakota, and House Speaker Mike Johnson, a Republican of Louisiana, a letter outlining demands Democrats want incorporated into a measure to appropriate more funds for the Department of Homeland Security. Those demands are pretty straightforward. The Democrats want federal agents to enter private homes only with a judicial warrant, as was policy until the administration produced a secret memo saying that DHS officials themselves could sign off on raids, a decision that runs afoul of legal interpretations of the Fourth Amendment. They want agents to stop wearing masks and to have their names, agencies, and unique ID numbers visible on their uniforms, as law enforcement officers do. They want an end to racial profiling, that is, agents detaining individuals on the basis of their skin color, place of employment, or language, and to raids of so-called sensitive sites, medical facilities, schools, child care facilities, churches, polling places, and courts. They want agents to be required to have a reasonable policy for use of force and to be removed during an investigation if they violate it. They want federal agents to coordinate with local and state governments and for those governments to have jurisdiction over federal agents who break the law. They want DHS detention facilities to have the same standards as any detention facility, and for detainees to have access to their lawyers. They want states to be able to sue if those conditions are not met, and they want Congress members to have unscheduled access to the centers to oversee them. They want body cameras to be used for accountability, but prohibited for gathering and storing information about protesters. And they want federal agents to have standardized uniforms like those of regular law enforcement, not paramilitaries. As Schumer and Jeffries wrote, these are common-sense measures that protect Americans' constitutional rights and ensure responsible law enforcement, and should apply to all federal activity even without Democrats demanding them. Democrats said White House offers were insufficient to address their concerns, although the White House did not make its position public. Before they left Washington yesterday for a 10-day break, senators refused to fund DHS in its current state. Before the vote, administration officials appeared to try to soften the image of the federal agents who have terrorized Americans, arrested citizens and legal immigrants as well as undocumented immigrants, and shot people. Trump's immigration advisor, Tom Homan, who took over in Minneapolis after Border Patrol agents acting under the leadership of then-Commander Greg Bovino shot and killed a second American citizen in that city, told reporters yesterday that the administration will end its surge of federal agents into Minneapolis, saying it had achieved successful results, including 4,000 people arrested. Agents will remain in the city, he said, but the surge of thousands of agents will end. Tori Van Oot of Axios adds that more than a dozen federal prosecutors resigned after the Department of Justice declined to investigate the killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, and support for Trump's handling of deportations cratered as Americans saw children tear-gassed and citizens shot. Acting Director of ICE Todd Lyons told the House Homeland Security Committee on Tuesday that the agency is training agents adequately before they go into the field, and that, once there, they are properly enforcing U.S. immigration laws. And, he added, we are only getting started. But Lyons' claim that federal agents are adequately trained was belied on Wednesday when the Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, abruptly closed the airspace over El Paso, Texas, for what it initially said would be 10 days. Such a closure would shut down all flights below 18,000 feet, including medical helicopters, and is rare enough that the comparison media used was to the closure of airspace after 9/11. Confusion reigned since no one had notified even the mayor of El Paso, a city of 700,000 people. Shortly afterward, the FAA reopened the airspace. Administration officials immediately said the problem was drones flown into the area by drug cartels, though such drone flights are common. Then the media reported that the Defense Department had been testing out a new anti-drone defense system without sign-off from the FAA on danger to civilian planes. Then it turned out that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth had permitted U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the parent agency of Border Patrol, to use an anti-drone laser near Fort Bliss, where detainees are housed at Camp East, Montana. Someone then used the laser without informing the FAA. And then it turned out that the drones agents used the laser to shoot down were actually party balloons. That the Defense Department is loaning a military weapon to CBP is itself concerning, but that a weapon powerful enough to cause the closure of El Paso's airspace was in the hands of someone who mistook balloons for cartel drones is also a problem. So too, of course, is that the administration's initial impulse was to lie about what happened. In his testimony, Lyons maintained that ICE is indeed prioritizing the removal of undocumented immigrants with records of violent crime, enabling Republicans to claim that Democrats who want to rein ICE in are deliberately endangering public safety. Camilo Montoyo Galvez of CBS News reported this week that documents from DHS itself show that fewer than 14% of the nearly 400,000 immigrants arrested in Trump's first year had either convictions or charges for violent crimes, with fewer than 2% either charged with or convicted of homicide or sexual assault. Leah Feiger of Wired reported today that ICE has been quietly and aggressively expanding across the United States in the past months. It has bought or leased new facilities in nearly every state, many of them outside of the country's largest cities, although they are concentrated in Texas. Feiger reports that DHS asked the General Services Administration, or GSA, which manages government properties, to ignore competitive bidding rules and hide lease listings out of national security concerns. Douglas McMillan and Jonathan O'Connell of The Washington Post reported today that ICE officials are planning to spend $38.3 billion to buy warehouses across the country. ICE will retrofit 16 of them to become processing centers that can hold 1,000 to 1,500 detainees at a time, before funneling them into 8 mega centers that can hold up to 10,000 detainees each. The administration has dramatically changed ICE policy to assert the right to imprison non-citizens until they are deported, even if they are applicants for asylum. Representative Jamie Raskin, a Democrat of Maryland, made an unannounced oversight visit to the ICE field facility in Baltimore, Maryland yesterday. He saw 60 men packed into a room shoulder to shoulder, 24 hours a day, with a single toilet in the room and no shower facilities. They sleep like sardines with aluminum foil blankets. Mike Hixenbaugh at NBC News today narrated the life of a Russian family in the U.S. seeking asylum. For 4 months, they have been incarcerated at the Dilley Immigration Processing Center in Texas, where there is little medical care and the food is often spoiled with mold or worms. In a statement, a spokesperson for DHS accused the media of peddling hoaxes about poor conditions in detention centers. But DHS has lied about so many things that no one should take their words seriously. In January, when an ICE agent shot Julio Cesar Sosa Celis in Minneapolis, DHS claimed that he had driven away from a targeted traffic stop, crashed into a parked car, and run. When an ICE agent caught up with him, DHS said, the men had attacked the agent with a snow shovel and a broom handle. DHS said an agent had then fired on the men to defend his life. The men escaped but were later captured and charged with assault. Yesterday, the Justice Department dropped the charges, saying newly discovered evidence suggested the allegations were false. Alhorna's lawyer explained, "It is my understanding that the video surveillance evidence that captured the incident was materially inconsistent with the federal agent's claims of what happened." Last night, in a deep expose of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and her advisor Corey Lewandowski, Wall Street Journal reporters Michelle Hackman, Josh Dawsey, and Tarini Party described a department in chaos. Noem and Lewandowski, who the authors say are having an affair and essentially run the department together, are using DHS for their own aggrandizement with an eye to elevating Noem to the presidency. The reporters detailed the focus on image, the decimation of ICE by firing or demoting 80% of the career field leadership that was in place when they arrived, the apparent steering of contracts to allies, and their excessive demands, including a luxury 737 MAX jet with a private cabin in back for their travel around the country. DHS is currently leasing the $70 million plane, but is in the process of buying it. DHS and the violence of federal agents have exacerbated rather than silencing opposition to the Trump administration, causing a crisis for it as the American people increasingly turn against it. Trump is adamant that Republicans must win the 2026 elections, and so is calling for new election laws, claiming that Democrats can win elections only through the illegal votes of undocumented immigrants. This ties DHS and American elections together. Today, Noem told reporters in Arizona that Congress must pass the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility, or SAVE America, measure to secure U.S. elections, lying that non-citizens are voting for Democrats and thus enabling them to win elections. This is an old saw Republicans have used since 1994, the year after the Democrats passed the Motor Voter Act, and it has been repeatedly debunked. Indeed, when reporters asked for an example of non-citizen voting, she said she couldn't point to a case, but assumed it happened. The bill would not only require voters to show either a passport or a birth certificate with the name matching theirs in order to register, but would also require states to purge their voting rolls every month. The measure passed the House Wednesday, but must overcome a filibuster to pass the Senate. Jen Fifield of ProPublica and Zach DePart of ProPublica and the Texas Tribune reported today that DHS has been using an electronic tool called Systematic Alien Verification for Entitlements, or SAVE, previously used to check eligibility for public benefits, to find non-citizen voters in a database made up of confidential data from different government agencies. That information includes confidential data from the Social Security Administration, accessed by the Department of Government Efficiency. Republican secretaries of state in 27 states have agreed to use SAVE to check their voter rolls. But Fifield and DePart report that the system makes persistent mistakes, frequently assessing naturalized citizens as non-citizens. The system automatically refers those individuals to DHS for possible criminal investigation, and in certain states, individuals have had to prove their citizenship to be reinstated as voters. This is not ready for prime time, County Clerk Brianna Lennon of Boone County, Missouri, told the reporters, and I'm not going to risk the security and the constitutional rights of my voters for bad data. And so Trump clearly thinks he must take matters into his own hands. Although the Constitution is quite clear that it is Congress and Congress alone that can make laws, today his social media account announced he intends to change the nation's voting laws all by himself. The account posted, "The Democrats refuse to vote for voter ID or citizenship. The reason is very simple. They want to continue to cheat in elections. This was not what our founders desired. I have searched the depths of legal arguments not yet articulated or vetted on this subject and will be presenting an irrefutable one in the very near future. There will be voter ID for the midterm elections, whether approved by Congress or not. Also, the people of our country are insisting on citizenship and no mail-in ballots, with exceptions for military, disability, illness, or travel. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump." Today, ICE protesters carried a giant U.S. Constitution through the streets of Minneapolis, demanding that federal agents honor the rights the framers established with that foundational document.
Letters from an American was written and read by Heather Cox Richardson. It was produced at Soundscape Productions, Dedham, Massachusetts. Recorded with music composed by Michael Moss.